morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever you are in the world. So today, again, we have a really amazing project to talk about today. In fact, it's more than a project; it's a massive company that's building, ecosystems all around the metaverse and beyond. And where we're at kind of today is we're in early 2022. I will say metaverse is one of those huge buzzwords, and we can all still be upset with Zuckerberg for stealing the word meta. Until another name comes around, we're going to stick with metaverse. But I think really it's a very misunderstood space. There's a lot that needs to happen before metaverse is a real thing, and there's a lot of technology that still has to be implemented before I would say there's mass adoption. And this is all from my perspective. But the great thing is that we have Lorne from Metaverse Group here today, and Lorne, now you can tell me all the reasons why I'm wrong. But let's kind of start off with a little bit of backstory of how did you even get to the point of wanting to invest all your time in a virtual world.
Thanks, Jay, and thanks for taking time to chat today, and appreciate the yWhales community and the chance to chat in front of them about this exciting and interesting stuff. As far as me in my background, I've started as a banker, which feels like 100 years ago, but it wasn't quite 100 years ago. I'm not quite that old, but back in the mid 90s. And I had always been a tech lover, and at previous to that, actually even worked in consulting around tech and other things related to that. But where I really got interested was in those mid 90s, and I was a tech banker at a firm that's now owned by Stifel, which some of you may have heard of, which is obviously a big mid-market firm and quite a presence in tech through yWhales and others. And so I started there. I was involved with many internet .com projects, took many public, M&A, all that type of good stuff. But what it really taught me, or what it really interested me in, was, the fact that where we sit here today, and you want to call it metaverse, Web 3.0, however we want to define these, and obviously there's different definitions for both those elements, but as they relate and overlap, it really reminds me that we're back here in where I was in Web 1.0. And I had a chance to see all the mistakes and all the great things that many people did. I had a chance to see what we're kind of going through with call it tech downturn, the crypto winter, however you want to refer to it, that we're potentially in now, or probably in now, unfortunately. And I think that gives me a unique perspective to build this business today, that from the learnings that I had back then. So I spent 15 years in investment banking, a number of years running the tech investment banking group, working with early stage businesses for the most part, working with companies that, I had a chance to grow up with, and they grew up with me, and, growing to very significant size businesses. And then I realized that someday after, 15 years of doing it, one, it wasn't that much fun anymore. No disrespect to any of the bankers on the line. And two was I actually wanted to be an entrepreneur. Which was scary at first, and I left to run a health tech enabled business. Spent 9 years running that business. I learned a ton, made a lot of mistakes, but I think I'm smarter and wiser. Certainly have the lashes on my back, or however you want to refer to it, from it. And as I always refer, entrepreneurialism was one of my favorite lines. I got it very early on when I was running this company. Was someone said to me, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I totally get what you're doing. It's my fourth or fifth startup, and it's champagne bottles and razor blades." I'm not sure if it's appropriate to refer to razor blades in this day and age, but that's really what it feels like, the ups and downs and the great moments in that. So we spent 9 years. We had ups and downs in that business too. Ultimately sold last summer to a public company. So really, really happy about that. And then I got a call from a good buddy of mine, a guy named Andrew Kegel, who was the founder and CEO of Hut 8 Mining, or one of the four founders and first CEO of Hut 8 Mining, which is, for some of you who don't know, a NASDAQ listed Bitcoin mining company, probably the first publicly listed. He had left and started another company called tokens.com, which is effectively a holdco for Web 3.0 businesses. And he said, "Hey, Lorne, what are you doing?" And he knows my love for growing businesses and getting involved with early stage businesses, and either investing myself or helping to raise capital around it and helping them to grow and sitting on boards. And he's like, just sit on the board, You just have some fun. It'll take up a third of your time, and we can raise some capital together, and we get a chance to work together because we had worked together for 50 years at Stiefel. And I said, sure. Next thing you know, that I joined in October as a full-time CEO, and that third of my time became 24/7 is the way I put it, 150% of my time, and the rest became history. And so I've been the CEO of the business for the past almost 12 months now. We're getting close, and it's been an amazing ride. Certainly, I didn't expect Facebook/Meta to make the announcement they did last year, and certainly that changed my life, made this much more rapid, but in some ways positive, some ways negative. And so that's kind of how I'm here, and a little bit of my background.
I love that. And so before we jump into, kind of Metaverse Group and everything you're doing today, it's a really, diverse, kind of amount of work that you've done. And I believe that, irregardless, there's no such thing as a metaverse expert because, the entire concept, I mean, at most we could go back. I was looking today, doing some research, and NASA actually had a VR goggle set from 1985. That they had been playing around with. So, I mean, there's always been this concept of like a virtual world type thing. And I remember even in the probably mid to late 90s going to the mall and putting on those giant headsets, and looking at the Tron like things and being like, oh my God, that's crazy. But it's, I mean, still not here, it's still coming. And so, now we're at the point where, as you having done investment banking and everything you can, that timing is everything. Like you can have all the money in the world. And we saw Second Life, companies pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into Second Life. And, it's just not here today. What was kind of, as you were looking at even accepting this job, what were some of the key metrics that you said, like, this is close, this is closer than it's ever been?
So, that's a great question. I would suggest, some of the hardware pieces certainly aren't here today. They're coming, right? We read about what certainly Meta's doing on the hardware side. I think there was a video of, there you go, I have those too, about Zuckerberg and the next generation of the Oculus. And certainly, I'm sure Apple's up to something on the hardware side to replace our phones with some cool AR glasses. So we all know that's coming. Like there's just so much money and with the chips, NVIDIA, et cetera, going into it. But really, where it really resonated with me is if I look back, to last October, I sat down with my kids and my wife around the dinner table, and I said, have you ever heard of this thing called the metaverse? And they're like, huh? What's the metaverse? My daughter said to me, I love NFTs though. And so I'm like, okay, well, the metaverse is based on NFTs. Virtual land is really just an NFT. So it's a concept that you should be familiar with. And then we did took a little step further. We all got together and watched Ready Player One, which my wife found too animated and too young for her. But the rest of the family, eyes were glued, and we couldn't get our eyes off the TV set. And my son thought that was so cool. And then I said to him, Aiden, hey, he's just turned 13. Do you think that you live in the metaverse? He's like, what are you talking about, Dad? His word at the time, which he now denies he ever used, was bunk. You're bunk. You don't know what you're talking about. And so I said, okay, show me your Grand Theft Auto. And so all due respect to my poor parenting skills and letting him play Grand Theft Auto, we got on Grand Theft Auto together, and there he is with his iPad beside him and his 20 buddies' heads popping up on FaceTime or whatever they're using, and he's screaming at them. They're screaming at each other. He's talking into his PlayStation 5 controller, and he's got the game in front of him. And I'm like, aren't you in a metaverse, Aiden? He's like, well, what's a metaverse? I'm like, well, it's not Web 3.0 metaverse. It's a centralized metaverse, but that truly is a metaverse. And when I saw how they interacted and how he interacted with his friends, and I looked at my daughter and how she interacts with her friends, similar type things. She's a shopper, 15-year-old daughter, and she'll go on and do all these different e-commerce experiences and all these different things. And she's talking to her friends, again, a similar type thing, using FaceTime or her phone or whatever to have conversations. And to me, I saw an opportunity to create much more immersive and special experiences that make us deeper and allow us to get deeper and spend more time in these unique experiences. I'm still a big fan of the outdoors. And so I don't want to say anything, and my kids get outdoors, and we make sure they get outdoors. But my point is, it's just an evolution, and I could see the evolution of the time we spend on the internet or in games into a metaverse, and it just makes it much more fun when you can interact with your friends and get much deeper in your experiences.
No, I love those analogies, and as long as we're talking movies, Ready Player One, I think it really sets kind of the modern stage for a lot of concepts that should make their way into the metaverse. The ability to purchase things in a virtual world that show up in the physical world. The idea that you have a lot of the rest is relatively standards, friends around the world, decentralized structures, and lots of things. But there was clearly some issues with the metaverse, which was wholly owned by a sole party that that if any other person got control of it, it was destruction and death of the entire thing that hundreds of millions or billions of people around the world loved. And I think that was really that centralized architecture that probably for all of those of us, we go, oh my god, this is terrible. And for Zuckerberg, he's like, that's a business plan, let's do that. And so I would also like to just throw out the movie that I really believe is probably slightly closer to the next generation, which is Free Guy. I've watched that one a half a dozen times, and I think that the way they kind of manage the internal VR AR like concepts are really strong and straightforward on that one.
That's unfortunately that's one I haven't seen. That's my next weekend whatever movie that I'll definitely have to watch. So appreciate that. I don't disagree with your statement, and I'd even throw in another concept is that Ready Player One and I don't know about Free Guy, but it's in a dystopian state, and I don't think we need to be in a dystopian state to have the metaverse. I think there's so many good elements that can come out of the metaverse. We don't need to be driven because the outside world is so horrific to just having this virtual world where everything is wonderful, or where we think that everything is wonderful. I think there's so many other things. And, great example, again, I love my analogies, but I have a good friend that I grew up with that doesn't live in this country anymore. And we don't really get a chance to see it very often for a variety of different reasons. At the end of the day, we used to love going to Springsteen concerts together. It would be pretty awesome. And my hope is that the Metaverse Group will do this at some point in the near future. And in fact, maybe sooner than we think, where we'll get a chance to do a Bruce Springsteen-like concert in the metaverse, where I can stand there beside my buddy, have a chat, and watch it, even though I'm sitting here in Toronto, Canada, and he's sitting wherever he's sitting around the world. And I think those types of things, where it's not just existing friendships, but new friendships, and so many different things that allows us to do. And again, I don't think it requires a dystopian world either at that point in time.
I agree. And, to talk about the tech a little bit, I'm very privileged that I have, so many resources. The Oculus is again, for anyone that just is curious, like you just go buy an Oculus. It's Facebook. I get it. Just go get the Oculus 2. You're going to really get a much better understanding of it. But we have the head of research and development for HTC is in yWhales. And so we get early access to some of their stuff there. And I will say, it's coming a lot sooner than most people think. Like there is billions and billions of dollars in research and technology. And I will say that the global quarantine and the global pandemic was kind of a double-edged sword for the metaverse. Number one, it really, I think, accelerated the need for ways to connect that are beyond physical. And I think that there's a certain level that can be done outside of physical that, again, travel is going to be restricted a number of ways over the years and whatnot. But so it clearly accelerated the need for the metaverse, hence why you're doing what you're doing and changed careers. But it also kind of hindered because we've got global supply challenges on being able to get chips and other things that are needed when every computer manufacturer is behind and everything else. So I think there's a lot there, and I don't want to dive too deep into that, but it's clearly to go way back to my earliest question, why now? And you answered it 3 times over. It's we're at that tipping point. There's the knowledge, there's the investment, the technology is pretty much here. Now what are those killer use cases? What are those viral moments that can adopt, not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of millions to hundreds of millions of people into these virtual worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've summarized exceptionally well. I mean, I would add today that we don't need, necessarily to have these immersive experiences and these 3D experiences. We don't necessarily need AR and VR. I think it will obviously make them much more enjoyable and much more stickier when we get there. I mean, it'd be very cool if today we could, you and I could be sitting on a couch using our AR glasses and as if we're in the same room. That would be awesome. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but I agree with you. My view is Apple's got to be pouring billions of dollars, even though they don't love to tell us exactly what they're doing, into this. And certainly, we all know that VR glasses are getting billions of dollars poured into it. So it's coming, and I think that the next big issue, to your point, is adaption, right? And,
Yep.
frankly, we sit in a great seat as the Metaverse Group, where we get to speak to so many different companies and brands and different types of people that are so immersed in it. And there's certainly a huge desire from very large corporations across the world that are very interested in it, and want to delve into it, even though we are at a nascent early stage in building this out and in getting people adopted and involved. And you're right, we need to find our killer applications. I mean, I think they're kind of in front of us, and we kind of know what they are. We just need some more tech, and need further adoption of the metaverse.
No, absolutely true. There's so much here, but let's go ahead, and I think we've given enough background at this point that now I'm even curious, because again, I like to start these things with a bit of knowledge, but also curiosity and exploration. So, what is the Metaverse Group? What's kind of your core theses, and what have you guys been working on really for almost a year now, as you're building up and getting ready to go scale?
Yeah, look, so we're first and foremost, a virtual landholder. So today we own land in 10 plus metaverses. So we have Decentraland as our largest land holding. Part of our thesis there is it's the oldest metaverse. Goes back to 2017, and obviously has the largest adoption or continuous adoption today. Our second largest line holding is Sandbox. We think great corporate activations, great team behind that, lots of very good elements around that. Obviously, it's still in alpha or beta, get confused what they're calling it at the moment. So it's not fully up and live, which makes our business model a little harder to solidify inside the Sandbox, but is certainly a core position of ours. We're Insomnium Group. That's really truly firstly a VR based metaverse, really good graphics, very passionate. Archer is a very passionate CEO of that business model, of that business, and we think highly of it. We're in CryptoVoxels, which we think is a very, how do I put it? It's the easiest building block one. So we think we like that. It allows people to get up and running quickly. We're in Orbit, which is, what I would call the furthest out there. It's decentralized worlds, but it's cool and it's interesting. So we dipped our toes in it. NFT Worlds, which is built on Minecraft. And so we kind of like that thesis because there's a huge underlying, obviously user base and knowledge base of Minecraft, but they're building it on a blockchain, which is really pretty cool using the Minecraft software. We're in Superworld, which is a mirror world of the real world. Love Rish and his team and his energy, exceptional. The guy travels around the world like no one else, and think there's some cool stuff to happen there. Obviously, early days, and then we have 4 or 5 other, what I would call next generation metaverse 2.0 type worlds that are more on Unreal Engine 5 and more photorealistic. And we recently struck a partnership with something called Horizon Labs to get access to I've drawn a blank of the Yuga Lab metaverse, and I've drawn a blank of the name of the Yuga's Labs metaverse. That on me, but
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, yeah. So we're staking our position in these different metaverses. We think it's important for us to have our land holdings because it allows us to get close to the different metaverses, to be able to work with them and understand what their needs are, and ultimately to really bring in our business model, which our business model ultimately is to bring brands, corporations into the metaverse. And so, we go about that by, working with our team. So we have a team that is effectively a consulting team that consults to these different corporations, these different brands. What metaverse do you want to be in? What makes sense for your business strategy? How do I get in? All those types of things. We work with them. We have a software design team that can build out the virtual buildings, virtual experiences, gamify an experience, NFTs, all those types of things. So we'll work with that corporation and really create a roadmap and help them execute on their roadmap of what is their metaverse/NFT strategy. And so we get those projects into place and build it out. And that's kind of the first step of our business model, or the core of our business model, is that service-based business model, layered on top of obviously doing this all on our own land. And then the second piece of our business model, which is where I think the significant upside potentially comes into play, is we're also partnering with brands where we have a revenue share, 50-50 revenue shares, 60-40s, those types of things. And effectively, we're kind of controlling over significant periods of time, 3, 5, 7-year periods, their metaverse strategy. And so they kind of hand over the keys to the front door to us and say, hey, here you go, Metaverse Group. Go, based on your expertise, based on your knowledge of the space, go and build out what you think is the best strategy for us. You spend the money to build it out, which we do. And in return for you, carrying our strategy, we'll do a complete revenue share with us. And so I think that's a really cool part, to own effectively metaverse IP for some very large brands, and have a chance to monetize that. And while that might be a little bit tough in the crypto winter right now today, I think over a 3 to 5 year period or longer, that gives us plenty of time to hit that strategy and to really monetize with these brands. And the last piece I would share with you about the Metaverse Group is, we're not just about PFP projects and things like that and just dropping things with no utility. We're all about, in our metaverse roadmaps that we build with these brands, we're really trying to engage with them to create what I would say is a roadmap in driving community and utility to whatever they do. And I think there's some great utility projects out there that we could talk about, where you've seen huge utility to the community, and those projects tend to keep their value and actually grow and build their communities. And so that's the type of stuff we're trying to do today.
That's very interesting. And, I think one of the first questions I'm going to have for you is, you listed off lots of metaverses. But do you believe that except for the one that is spending the most amount of money, which is Facebook, which I'm never going to call them the other name. They're just Facebook. They need to deal with it. What do you believe, that there is a sole winner? Meaning very similar to Ready Player One, that there will be this is the metaverse. Everything else is fine, but 90% of usage, just like, Facebook and Google, and that, in the Web 2 world, there's these kind of clear winners. Email is either you're on Office 365 or Gmail, there may be one or two, but do you think that there's going to be a clear winner, or do you see something more similar to what we have now with the websites, which is, millions, hundreds of millions of metaverses that are out there with kind of interoperability?
So I will give you, I hear two different things, and I'll give you our obviously our view as the Metaverse Group and how we're looking at things. So, I've heard some people say to us, and some very sophisticated, tech/crypto investors, who think that every single company is going to have their own metaverse, and it's going to kind of become like a metaverse web page. And so we definitely have heard that. I'm not sure I agree with that. It's not every company is going to have the capability to do it. Yes, there will be service providers that provide the service, etc. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be more like social media is where we've settled on as a business and as a strategy. And what I mean by that is, look, there's Twitter, there's Facebook Meta, there's Twitch, there's TikTok, there's LinkedIn and Discord, and I've obviously forgot a ton. But there's probably 10 of them that really are matter and significant. They have different niches and different things, but I think you're going to see the metaverse in a similar way, where there'll be 10 really significant metaverses that dominate different areas and have different specialties or different focuses. And just like traditional world today where ABC Co could put up something on Instagram. They're potentially going to put up a post on Twitter as well about it. It's going to look different. It's for obvious reasons. One might be pictorial or video on Instagram. It might be, obviously you're going to write a little note on Twitter, and you might do something on LinkedIn at the same time. Might even do something on TikTok. And so I think you're going to see multiple activations and multiple things like that. I am also a big believer, even though I do think technologically wise, we're still a little ways away from it, is that there's going to be interoperability between those metaverses as well, which is a key component to make this really work. Because frankly, the t-shirt that I'm wearing today, or I'll pick on your t-shirt, Jay, is the Under Armour t-shirt that you're wearing today. I bet you're going to want to wear that when you're in Decentraland, as well as when you're in Sandbox, as well as when you're in Somnium or whatever other metaverse. And so I think that's a key component, is because just like clothes today is our identity in the real world, I think it's going to be our identity in the metaverse. And our avatars, we're going to want to wear that same pair of jeans and that same t-shirt in each of the metaverses. So I think interoperability is a big key to this as well.
I think it's huge, and it was the leading question because today Microsoft, Meta, and some others announced a open standards group. And, there's two notable missing people from there. One was Apple, the other was Roblox, but, Apple doesn't have anything to announce yet, so they're not really going to join anything. And let's be clear, no matter what Microsoft agrees to, Apple can absolutely, go ahead and Adobe Flash them and say, nope, never mind, this is what we're doing. But I think that that's really a core thing to what you just said here, which is there has to be interoperability. There can maybe be 3 metaverses. Like, there's 4, I don't know, maybe a half dozen of the kind of big social media networks out there. And it's really interesting. I've never heard anyone, kind of use that collaboration. So that's always why I like talking to the full-time professionals like yourself. So, but the idea is, like, I think of how long I've spent in some games, like building my character, designing it out. I don't want to do that every time. I don't want to turn on a new game and bring all these things in. And so I think that, a lot of people that don't understand that the metaverse side of it is, we'll just use Ready Player One because it's one you're most familiar with. The guy comes in and he's going through other worlds, other games. And traditionally that would be, entirely different, video games or different versions of, it could be entirely different, Xbox versus PlayStation. But he's just fluidly moving, even though it's kind of bridging in between, can make adjustments, can make changes, but those changes follow him as he goes through. And I think that's really what a lot of people want to see. And remember, this is not for our generation. I'm in my mid 40s. And this stuff is not being designed for me. This is being designed for our kids. I've got a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. And they very closely are following these things. And that's what they think of. That's, my 15-year-old is interested in cars. But I'd say he's also more interested in some of the NFTs and crypto stuff that's happening today. And that's where, again, that kind of idea of ownership online is a very different deal than, like, I'm going to put it in your account and you have theoretical access to it until I change my mind. So it's a very cool way to look at things.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on a really interesting point, around the NFT ownership. It's, if I look at my 15-year-old daughter, or about to be 15-year-old daughter, it's similar type of concept. She was more interested in getting NFTs from the fashion week that we held in Decentraland than collecting other stuff. And so she just found it very cool. I want to have it in my wallet. Obviously it's a representation of who I am. And we went through different NFT wearable collections, and she picked out what she wanted, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's really important in that representation. And ideally she would be able to, as you pointed out, move it from different metaverse to metaverse and not have to worry about, oh, well, I got to change, I got to do this. It's got to be seamless. It's got to be easy.
So I'm going to pick on Decentraland for a minute. I have sent my older son in a couple times. I've sent him and his friends in a couple times. The last time I did it was last year. I gave him a couple ETH. I think ETH at that point was $4,000 or $5,000, so quite a hefty spending budget as a research, because I've been in there a number of times. And I sent him in with it was probably about $8,000 to $10,000 in USD. And said, I want you to just go figure it out. I want you to spend the time. I want you to enjoy it. Like, whatever it is, buy whatever you feel you want to do. And that's great. And he came upstairs, about an hour later, and he goes, I don't get it. I said, well, you go back down there and you play that video game until you do. And 3-4 hours later, he came up and says, please don't ever make me do that again. And so it's not that it's not engaging. It's not that it's not the right concept. It's just that there's that element missing. What in your mind is that element of engagement that's missing for these kids?
So I have a couple of comments to that. So it kind of goes back to where we were at the discussion of these different social media applications. So my view, and I think I think it'd be fair, Decentraland, the DAO wouldn't disagree with what I'm about to say, is Decentraland is kind of the social metaverse. And so really what it is, it's community based, event based, and like you can see at different times, those events are very well trafficked, relatively speaking, in this day and age of metaverses, and quite engaging because you have concerts going on, or fashion shows, or different events or other things that people are creating, gamified experiences, etc. And so can be quite engaging for periods of time. On a regular day-to-day basis, going into Decentraland, and I go on there on a pretty regular basis, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you, it's just not that engaging to anyone, frankly. And so it either needs more frequent events or it needs to evolve. I'm not sure what the right answer for Decentraland is. I think it's more frequent events, so it doesn't go away from what it's been known to be good for and what it's gained notoriety for. But it certainly isn't fully engaging because it really isn't very fun unless you're at an event. So going back to the crux of your question, I think in Decentraland, they just need more events and more fun events and things like that. And you can, like I said, see stuff like that. In other metaverses, what's going to engage, a 10-year-old or 15-year-old or 13-year-old. Like my son isn't going to hang out in Decentraland. He's going to be on like I said, a Grand Theft Auto game or something like that, which is more fun and more gamified experience. And if you look at the different metaverses and you look at what Sandbox done, they're much more gamified. It is much more fun. They describe themselves as, I think, the Manhattan metaverse now, meaning it's always on, it's always fun, et cetera, et cetera. And I think your son would enjoy that much more because it is much more gamified.
Yeah, no, and I like I said, I warned everyone I was going to pick on Decentraland, but I did the same thing with all of them, and quite simply, good. It was, yeah. So they're there. So when you guys are building, and let's pull back to Metaverse Group because I want to make sure that we talk about this because it's important. When you guys are looking at your clients and you're using this for marketing, you're using it for exposure, you'd like to do something like a concert in there. How are you evaluating these opportunities as well as the different metaverses? Because there's a lot of them, and they're relatively siloed at this point still.
Yeah, I mean, from the opportunity perspective, at the end of the day, we try and think about ourselves: who are the audiences in the different metaverses, and what types of experiences would they like? A lot of times we're working, with companies or brands that have specific timelines that they're trying to, do things in the metaverse at the same time that they're doing things in the bricks and mortar world or the physical world. And so it's hard to always time these things right, which creates some problems with using Sandbox because it's not always open to allow, people to see these different events, and create some issues with Somnium because it is, like I said, much more of a VR experience and has a much lower user base. And so really, frankly, today, there aren't a ton of options for these different companies if they want to, a Web 3.0, a decentralized metaverse. And typically most of our events, most of our stuff, is happening in Decentraland. We have definitely used and will use Spatial and some others for certain types of, like if a corporate entity is just wanting to do, with certain clients or certain key employees, town hall, Spatial is a great place. It's not a true decentralized metaverse, but it's a great place to hold a metaverse-like event. And so we do stuff like that as well. But predominantly most of our stuff is happening in Decentraland. And then, with the types of how we prioritize the types of stuff we're doing, we really do believe that there are certain themes that sit very well and create engagement inside a metaverse. And fashion shows have done very well, art has done very well, music clearly does very well. Sports, we ourselves as a company hasn't done anything in sports yet, but we think there's a huge opportunity to do some sports stuff. It's complex because of the rights around sports and who owns those broadcast rights and different things like that. But really, if I say we're going to focus on things that really get people going, it's the fashion, it's the music, it's the wearables, it's the art. Those are the things that are really have had success and I think are engaging. And then obviously creating gamified experiences out of those as well, play to earn games in those, some of those, etc., really drives traffic.
That's amazing. What you're probably get more than I do, but I think I get pitched for a new metaverse project or a new entire metaverse at least once a week, if not more often, of like, hey, here's our thing and it's Decentraland with like ducks, or I don't know. What's like 3 key components you think that all of these, and regardless of which one they are today, like really need to have for that level of engagement? And I think you hit on one, which is it always has to be open. It can't close. Like I think that's a given. So we'll take that out of your 3 here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it has to be, so a few things is one, obviously I was open, but really what it needs to be is one is 2 is fun. So, and how do you create fun? Again, you can create fun in my view in community experiences like music events, but you also can create fun by having a game in it or games built into it that we all enjoy playing. And it can be some basic stuff sometimes that's just easy for us to play that we like and entertains us and takes us away from our day-to-day, whatever that we're thinking about. So I think, when we look at it, we definitely are looking for things like that. A second piece that we're starting to get more and more pushback on, and it's one that we debate a little bit ourselves, is the photorealism. So I think more photorealistic is a key component, certainly for, trying to engage more people to go into it. People find it too cartoonish, too animated, especially as you point out. I actually slightly disagree with you, Jay. I think metaverses are for people our age, but okay. We need a more photorealistic, something more engaging for us, as opposed to a game that your son or my son might be looking for. And so I think that combination where it's more photorealistic and therefore there are more experiences that will bring us to the table, whether it's some cool virtual car thing. I don't know if you're a car guy or not.
Oh yeah.
So stuff like that, I think that needs to happen. So that's the second piece of it. And the third piece, and there's more and rambling through my brain, but the third piece that I would say is the most important, that I probably should have said first, is community, adaption, people. Because if there are people, it's the fear of missing out. It's FOMO, right? If there are more people there, and if they created that community wherever it is, in Discord or somewhere else, and they're able to drive that community to the metaverse or vice versa, and engage that community and provide utility to those individuals that makes it feel cool and fun, then I think at the end of the day, more and more people are going to show up. And so, how do you drive traffic is very key. And we spend a lot of time talking to these metaverses. How are you going to get traffic? And, in a lot of cases, they frankly don't know the answer. And so, that's an interesting something that we can come back to later. I think, those are really the key elements that we look for in trying to figure out the right metaverses, or the metaverses that we see and kind of look at it as metaverse 2.0, those that we think have the best chance of succeeding as they emerge forward.
No, that's great. And again, I didn't give you any prep. You had to come up with that off the top of your head. So you did fabulous. And I think I agree with each and every one of those, including the community one, which is so important, because I see projects weekly, if not daily, beautifully designed, very well thought out, and they're just dead because they built it in a vacuum and they never once thought, like, who's going to use this? In their heads, they thought of someone, but they never actually engaged a real community to say, what's important to you? How do we integrate what your needs are into this? And so, a 15-year-old you can throw into, anything that's fun and they'll take care of it. You're right. People our age, you got to really, we're very picky. You got to think about what we may want, what we may need, and what we're willing to, learn, versus something else. Like I see video games nowadays, and my my two boys are constantly like, Dad, will you play Call of Duty with me? I'm like, I'll play the original one where there's like shoot, crouch, and like throw a grenade. Like you get like 4 buttons out of me and that's it. Like this whole, they were trying to play football the other day and it's like, I, no, I hate to feel this way, but like, I just kind of want to go back to the old Nintendo, like 2 buttons and a thing. It has to be really lightweight and really easy. Who do you see kind of, that's not overcomplicating this? And I know everyone's kind of undercomplicating things right now, but do you think it needs to be something like EVE Online that's like a 30-day ramp up process to be able to use it? Or is it something that anyone can come in a couple hours be a near expert at?
So before I answer that question, I just wanted to come back to two of your points. So one, as a guy that banked tech for many years, as an investment banker, your comment about the customer and what the customer wants is really key, because I remember my day as a banker, and I do a lot of Series A's, seed investing. Is when I look at this type of stuff, there are a ton of really brilliant technologists that sit in a room and they create great technology, and then they come out and they go, I got my product, I have my MVP, but no one wants to use it. And they can't figure out, why does no one want to use it? Did you ever talk to the customer? Did you ever ask the individual what they're looking for? And I think the same thing applies to metaverses. Do you ever stop and think about and try and figure out what people are really looking for and what will make this compelling? And then the second piece I want to come back to with respect to our age group, because I'm older than you, but I won't share how old, but in the same age bracket. Yeah, I'm a gold guy, so there you go. But at the end of the day, what I would say to you is, what I watched in the internet in the early days, people were so skeptical, and like I said, I've always loved tech and I've always played with tech. So I was on the internet early on, playing with it and looking and watching, and I thought it was really cool, which is why I always wanted to be a tech banker. But at the end of the day, is people are so. I'm never going to do anything in there. Why would I do anything on the internet? I can walk into a store, I can read a paper magazine or paper newspaper, all this type of stuff. And as that stuff came, it pulled all of us, whether you were 10 years of age or 60 years of age. Maybe 60 is an overstatement, but certainly, the 50s, because that's where you got content. That's where you got information. That's where you banked. That's where you did all this different stuff. And so I think part of it is getting those, more or better photorealistic experiences that will bring the bigger companies and brands and information, and doing cool and different stuff that exists in the physical world today will bring you and I to go to the metaverse and do different things there, because it will be unique and it'll be engaging, and it will find things that we want to do or want to learn or whatever, right? Like travel is a great example of something like that could be very compelling and very cool. My wife and I are going on a trip this summer. And one of the things I keep saying, we should have a metaverse where, because she keeps saying, is it a far walk from the beach to the hotel and this type of stuff? And I'm like, it would be great if there was a metaverse where avatar could actually walk and say, oh, it's a 1 mile away or whatever it is. And so tons of great use cases that I think would bring people our age. And now, because I've talked too much, I forgot where your last question was. So
no, there's nothing else that's important. What you hit on was really good. So I'm gonna forget all my nonsense and go over to yours. So on that, kind of idea around like real world metaverses, like an overlaid, and you'll see what I mean when you watch Free Guy. The idea that there's augmented reality, which is something that truly has not been done in any meaningful capacity yet. We saw Google Glass a couple of years ago. They had the glasses that were heavy and stuttered and barely worked. I think we're going to see that again here shortly in a better form. But one of the things that I hear constantly, and from a few really in-depth people, including Alvin from HTC, Web 1, they said was defined by people spending 4 to 5 hours a day in front of a computer consuming data, something that had never been done before. Prior to that, whether it was a typewriter or computer, you were creating something. You were typing an email, typing, doing something, not even an email. You were just whatever. And then you could spend 4 to 5 hours a day in front of a computer. Web 2 was the phones, 4 to 5 hours a day in front of a mobile device, not talking on it, but actually interacting with it, using it. And we've seen there. And again, this is HTC that they believe, 4 to 5 hours plus a day in a virtual reality or augmented reality environment. And you can say prior to Web 1, people would have told you there's absolutely no way. I have the real world. You're entirely correct on that thesis. And prior to the iPhone, I remember when the iPhone, when Jobs came out and said, here's like the iPhone, I go, ugh, it's a touch screen. It's so sad. I wish they had done some buttons. Like you don't know until these visionaries come out. And I think that that's the same thing. When I look at the Oculus, it's heavy. Like to me, this is a better version because there's no cables, there's no cords, but it's heavy, it's slow, the resolution sucks. It's very limited in what can it do. But the idea that there's something coming that is either going to bridge the real world or create a whole new world. I don't think there's a difference between those two. I think it's that VR AR environment. What do you I'm going to ask you that same kind of question again around this thing. What do you think it needs to be like? Do you think that it needs to be an engagement that you go into it, or do you think it can just be an overlay of your world that you look at today?
So I think it's both. And so, I've always thought that, in the future, whenever that is, to your point, the next version of the AR glasses, whoever comes first, we'll be sitting here just like we're doing this, and I kind of referred to this earlier, where, we'll be sitting here and we would be wearing AR glasses, and we'd be sitting beside each other, and everyone would be seeing us sitting on a couch with, a whale floating behind us, or whatever was cool in the background. Right. So, that's the type of future where I see us. We'll spend 4 to 5 hours, and maybe it's more, to your point, in a more of a work environment, social environment, where during the day, we'll do that. At night, or during the day, we might go out for lunch with our friends or peers or whatever it may be. You're going to continue to wear those AR glasses, and that's where you're going to get information about phone calls, emails, all that type of stuff. And it's just going to become intertwined in with your day-to-day life. And then I think what happens at night, and I'm choosing night and day, and it could be sporadically through the day, it could be sporadically, throughout times, is when you want that more deeper immersive event, whether that's, a movie that you're watching and you get to participate in that movie, whether it's, a game that you're playing, which could be similar to a movie, those types of things. That's where you're going to go for your VR experience. So I think it's both. I think, the AR is more for your day-to-day interaction and really kind of replaces the phone. And I think the VR is where we go for our more deeper immersive experiences. For those that aren't aware, we did the first Fashion Week in Decentraland, which happened in March. It feels like it was years ago, but really only a couple months ago. And it was a fantastic success. Over 70 different brands participated: Etro, Ellie Saab, Tommy Hilfiger, Forever 21, and I'm forgetting obviously 65 others, but just to give people a feel for Dolce & Gabbana, feel for some of those. And that was held on 165 parcels of our land. It was also held in other parts of Decentraland. But it was a huge success, 108,000 registered users, over 7 billion or 8 billion media impressions. I can't remember the exact number. So wow. Huge media impressions. And it got really a great PR push. It wasn't hugely successful, I'd say, from huge sales of NFTs, but there were definitely NFTs and wearables sold, and concerts held. And this is the type of stuff that we're doing every day in the metaverse. And every day is probably an overstatement. We ain't that big yet. Someday, hopefully soon, but we're doing on a frequent basis. And that was a great example of a purely virtual experience, really well received. And we're going to hold that again this year. We're going to start to plan for it in September. So for any of those brands or companies that want to participate, please email me, call me. I'd love to chat with you. But on the other side of it is, we just recently, as an example, we just recently held Miami Fashion Week in Decentraland as well. And so that was a physical and virtual fashion show. So Miami, it was at the same time the actual Miami Fashion Week was happening, with Mayor Suarez and Antonio Banderas and some really cool people. And we built out a virtual runway in Decentraland. We held DressX, which is a wearable company that spent a couple days doing runway shows with us. And we actually did a live stream video of a sustainability talk that was being done on the Sunday and the closing day of Miami Fashion Week inside of Decentraland. So again, another example of the types of events and type of things we do. We also do cool, fun stuff. So we have something called Meta Yachts, which is the first marina in Decentraland. We own 8 different Meta Yachts. Our hope is, going back to interoperability, at some point, whoever buys those boats or is selling those actual yachts will be able to take those and drop those in the different metaverses. And so one could be a casino, one could be a brand, one could be whatever. And it's a chance for you to move your brand, company, or whatever you want around in these different metaverses. And so we think it's pretty cool and pretty fun and pretty playful, and a really great concept. We need some other help around technology to help us, but it's been fun. And so we create fun stuff like that in just 3 examples of things we've done recently. And then getting to your question, you can get in for really cheap. So today you could probably build a pretty basic experience for $10K, US. You want to do something a little more done up and nice, 25, 35, 50K is kind of depending on what you're looking for. So the average ticket size with most brands that we're working with these days is between 25 and 50K. And that gets them a pretty cool experience. And again, if you want to add on NFTs and monetization and other things, then it obviously gets much more expensive.
Lorne, that's the cheapest I've heard of anyone to get a metaverse experience. And I've interviewed quite a bit of groups that are doing this type of stuff. So I love hearing that you're trying to build this for the masses in a variety of ways. How were, in the last question on this, have you had any charities yet show up? I know we've heard businesses, but I feel like the foundations and the charities, like this is one of the best ways they could possibly expose themselves. Have you had any of that yet?
That's an interesting question, and I'm only pausing because I believe I've had a conversation recently. I don't know where that went, so you've reminded me about it. But we've had that conversation. I'm pretty positive, but nothing we've done live. We've had some conversations with politicians as well about doing some fundraising in the metaverse. Again, nothing that's went live. But yeah, I think that's interesting. And there's I think pretty cool stuff that you could do with foundations and other things. And there are a lot of sponsors that I think would show up with it. We were working on something with a foundation, a social foundation that is kind of went on the sidelines for the moment, but there were really some big, interesting brands and companies that wanted to sponsor that because I thought it was very cool and a way to get at a lot of people about this particular topic.
Love it. Love it. So as we move into the final section, alpha drop, I warned you earlier, anything cool that you're seeing, and you see a lot of cool stuff. It can be related to anything you guys have built. It can be just anything you've seen in and around Web3, cryptocurrency, metaverse, NFTs. What's kind of caught your attention recently that's been pretty cool?
Yeah. The stuff that really catches me, that I think is cool in NFT metaverse world is the way I'll put it, is it goes back to something I was talking about earlier, is creating community and creating something that is fun for everyone. So what I mean by that is, and I'll pick a Bored Ape Yacht Club is old, but I really think what they did was frankly amazing. And my view is they've created a brand. Some might disagree with me in a very backwards way. In the sense they started off with the community. I don't think they expected to do what they did. Maybe they did, but they certainly seeded it very well. They brought in the influencers, and we got to a point where they're driving. I know I unfortunately didn't make it to NYC NFT or NFT NYC this week, but I know there was huge activations and community stuff. And so they're very good at driving community and bringing people together. And they're now about to take it to the next step, which goes back to their metaverse and bringing it more to the masses with the other side metaverse that I had forgotten the name of earlier today. And so I think that concept, and they're selling merch and everything, where they've created a brand and something that some people trust. Yes, it's not perfect, and nothing is perfect in this day and age, but they've done a really amazing job. And I really love that project for what it's done. And you can see others, corporations, companies that are trying to create similar type projects and similar type utility, making it worthwhile. Like the Forever 21 twinning that they did with their beanies. Again, it wasn't true utility that people are getting out of that, but they were able to buy their beanies. They thought it was really cool. It was really cheap in Roblox, and now they're creating those in the store. And so you can twin your NFT with a true, black beanie from Forever 21. And so I think fun stuff like that, where there's a physical and digital aspect, is where it's going and where it needs to go. I think everyone needs to have fun with this stuff. So, I don't know, I'm Sorry, Siri's interrupting me on my phone. Um,
Listen, in the metaverse, it's going to be nonstop with these AI devices and everything else, listening to everything we say. That's why I listen. I don't want to take anything away from Zuckerberg and Facebook putting as much money and time into the metaverse as they do. I just want to say that I trust them zero with me entering and spending any amount of time with this device. Even being in my room is troublesome.
I get that. Yeah. It's so, I think I lost my trend of thought again, but I think you get the concept of where I was going. One particular project that I think is highly cool. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think those concepts in the twinning, oh yeah, that's where I was going, was my physical house. If I stuck my physical house that I'm sitting in today and I put that in the metaverse, it's quite boring, not interesting, not fun. You got to do fun, cool stuff with it is my view.
I love it. I love it. So, community yet again, showing up in Web3, and I've heard the comments. That's what we do, is we run yWhales, the community, and a number of other things. But that's our focus, and I think that again, metaverse is going to be the same thing. And you've been in tech investing for a couple decades at this point, and quite simply, knowing your audience is generally the best way to build a product. There's a few that can skirt that rule, but it's few and far between. So, Lorne, where's the best way for people that would like to interact with you or Metaverse Group? Websites, LinkedIn. Where are you hanging out?
So LinkedIn is great. You can also find us on our website, w.metaversegroup.com. So quite simple and easy. And yeah, love to hear from anyone. There's an info button on the website, or just reach out to me via LinkedIn. Awesome. Love to talk.
Love it. Love it. Lorne, Metaverse Group, yWhales. Again, another yWhale member, YPO member. We're thrilled to showcase, again, just how much energy is being moved into the space. And again, the business professionals are just now entering. Lorne, a year ago was just thinking about this, and now, again, already becoming the expert, and more so because it's changing every single day. And if you're not active today, it doesn't matter what you did 6 months ago. It's all outdated. So there's no use for history in an asset class that's moving this fast, as you very well know. So thank you guys. And we'll see you next time.